In the previous episode, we discussed some of the Malayalam short stories, the classic ones from 1891 onwards, when the first short story in Malayalam was published. And then we saw from there on how the short story format in Malayalam language evolved, how it got more complex in terms of themes, ideas, plots, and how more diversity came in. And eventually, by the 1930s, we saw the genre really took off. So that was one book of the series that is being done by Mini Krishnan for HarperCollins, where they are picking short stories from regional languages and translating them to English. From the same series, I have another book. This time, it's classic short stories from Kannada and once again translated into English. The translation is being done by Susheela Punitha. And the title of the book is A Tea Shop in Kamalapura, which is really the first short story that we find in the book. This one, The Tea Shop in Kamalapura, it was written in 1900. So not almost, but exactly 125 years ago. Seems like a long time. So right in the introduction section, the translator has made this point that she has tried to include different kinds of voices and ideas. So there's a lot of diversity that has been the focus in this book. And it seems obvious too when you read the names of the writers as well as the kind of stories they have written. So there is a lot of diversity. As I said, the book begins with the first short story at a tea shop in Kamalapura. And it's called the first short story, at least in the modern Kannada, the first short story that was published. And it was written by Panje Magesharaya. And it's a really funny one. Takes you back to the country life of India, where a lot of casual banter is going on. And that's where you, in terms of descriptions, in terms of dialogues, you find the everyday humor, the everyday highs and lows of life that goes on in the country life in this country, or at least that's what it used to be. Nowadays, I think majority of Indians, they live in cities or in close proximity to the cities. So even though we think like a lot of people live in the country, but they don't. But anyway, you can still get transported to that world by reading the books, and that's what we do. So let me give you some idea what happens in the story. First of all, let's just get to the settings of this short story. Let me read the first paragraph. It gives a very nice idea of the setting, very simply and nicely explained what the settings are. It says, the harbor at Kamalapura basked in the warmth of the evening sun during one of the two balmy months of Vasanta. A few boats from Veerapura, tethered to the dock, danced gently on the ripples. A boatman held the blade fixed to a cutting board firmly between his toes, scaled fish deftly, and tossed them into a mud pot of water near at hand, while shooing away the crows that came swooping down. Fisherwomen stood waist deep in water, watchful, diving suddenly to the surface with crabs that they tugged into the pouch-like folds of their saris. A Mapila youth, that is a Malayali Muslim youth, on the bank stole secret glances at these dark skinned beauties, giving free rein to his imagination. So that's the setting being described here. We are here at the banks of a river. There are fishermen, fisherwomen, and then there is this guy who's looking at these women. That's a typical country scene in this country, at least in the south. In north, you don't have uh, this so much culture of catching fish, fisherwomen, fishermen, but generally that's what people do. Very slow life, and people just looking at each other, staring at each other. And I think it would be fair if I read another paragraph, the next paragraph, that's all, to give you the idea what else is going on there. There is also, it's not just the rural setting, there is also this connectivity, and something is going on there. A lot of activity is happening. So it says, there was hurry and bustle everywhere, with the screech of vehicles and the clamour of coolies adding to the din. A merchant in a corner took stock of the bags of coffee seeds from the ghats, calling out to the labourers to stock them. Men unloaded goods from a ship from Bombay. An old clerk writing the manifest of goods in a shipment supervised the proceedings with the fingers of one hand, holding his glasses in place and tugging at the pen stuck behind his ear with his free hand. An English officer held on to the helm of a white boat as he made his way towards the seashore. His foot soldier stood in the boat holding a rifle. A group of retired gentlemen walked down the promenade praising each other. It was a bit too early for government officials to come out to refresh themselves. The few who were out wended their way towards the 3 paisa tea shop. Some who had already eaten patted their moustaches delicately with their handkerchiefs. Some others filled the air with cigar smoke, yet some others struck matchsticks to light their biddies. Quite obviously, all of them valued money. So that's the other side of those times. What was going on? There were British colonial officers, then their foot soldiers. The trade was going on. That's British India. Remember, this was 125 years ago. All the economic activities going on at the beach, rather at the port. And that's where we find this 3 paisa tea shop. And we learn that this person who owns this tea shop, the idea for him is not really to make a lot of money, but to just help people, serve them tea. And that's also got me thinking, that's really the business idea in India, isn't it? People don't want to, at least in the business community, the traditional businessmen in India, they don't have this idea of creating something extravagant and costing it at a high price. They want to make money, but how they do it, they keep it at a very low price, and they get then a lot of customers. That's precisely what is happening in today's India also. The big business players, they sell things at a very cheap price, then they get a lot of market, huge market share, and then they make money. That's precisely the idea here. So that's what is going on. Even though, once again, the idea for this person wasn't to earn a lot of money, which I think is this value is pretty common in India even today. People are not really crazy about making money. In fact, in a lot of circles, people see it negatively. So they hold themselves back when it comes to make money. They want to keep things simple, sell things at a reasonable price. That's what you find at the common streets and markets in this country. A lot of people selling a lot of stuff at a very low price. And then we are introduced to the protagonist of this story. His name is Punuswamy Iyengar, and Iyengar is the manager of the tea shop, and he is known for something, a quality that exaggerates a lot. He makes up a lot of stories, shows off, boasts about a lot of things, and people there are quite familiar with it. So the opening scene is that then there are a couple of guys who are making fun of him, and they are saying that you talk about this person and all your stories. Where's that person? And suddenly in walks this person, Gundacharya, and then he comes in and joins them and tells them all the stories that Iyengar has been telling. They are all true. I was there. All those exaggerations about fighting crocodile or something, all those are true because I was there. He testifies it. And suddenly all the people they were there, they get impressed. And now everyone suddenly believes Iyengar that, oh my God, we probably did not believe him. We thought he was making it up, but all of this is true. But then later we learned that this person, Gundacharya, Iyengar had brought him there by giving him money, and somehow he wants his people to believe that all his stories are true. So that's why he paid him the money. But somehow the things go wrong, and this guy, Gundacharya, eventually refuses to leave, tries to make money out of Iyengar, scans him, and then eventually, to give you a spoiler alert, just spills the beans and tells everyone the truth. And Iyengar then disappears. That's how the story ends. So that was the funny one. From funny story, let's go to a serious one, rather a tragic one. The story is called The Girl I Killed. It was published in 1931, and I found it really interesting, and I'm sure you would too. So let me tell you what really happens in the story. So the protagonist, he's a writer and also photographer, which I found interesting because it was 1930, 31, and photography wasn't common, but this person was traveling and going to different places, writing about it, and clicking a lot of pictures, especially temples. He goes to this particular place, and he stays at a person's house, and there he meets a girl, a young girl. He's curious about her. Who is she? He's probably attracted to her, even though he's married. And eventually he finds out about her. She is the daughter of his host. And while he's staying there in one of the nights, she comes to his room and tries to make advances. And he is really shocked. What is she doing? And then he tries to reveal his identity, that I'm married, I cannot do this. You're also probably under the watch of your parents, so you shouldn't do this. And she's like, it's fine. Even my parents, if they find out, it's fine, no big deal. And that makes him a bit shocked that what's going on, how can this happen? And then she reveals her identity, that she's a kind of a woman who has been offered to a deity, which means she's married to a deity, and now she's not allowed to get married. But, and here's a big but, she is supposed to entertain some of the guests who come there and stay with them. That seems like a really shocking practice, especially to our modern ear, and similarly to the protagonist. It sounds shocking. How can this happen? And he starts arguing, and that's really the crux of this story. That he starts, that particular scene, when he starts arguing with her that what you're doing is no less than prostitution. The girl is trying to fight for her identity, that no, it's not that. I'm not doing it for money. I'm not really that kind of a person. I'm doing it as something I like, and this is who I am. And This conversation goes on and off, and eventually, this protagonist is able to persuade her somehow. She starts crying. She's just so messed up in terms of her identity, her self worth. She gets really confused at that point. Then she goes away, and in the morning, they all find out that she has committed suicide. And that's really where the story ends. The protagonist regrets that what he has done. Maybe she had a different world, maybe she had a different morality. He shouldn't have lectured her. So that really makes you think that probably you should not go on preaching. Let people live. Maybe they are different from you. Maybe they have their own practices. It's fine, whatever works. That's what I thought about it. Maybe you can derive different conclusions. Maybe you might think that it's a good idea to judge people morally. I don't know. But the story makes you think really. Then another story that makes you think and is quite interesting gets a surprise twist towards the end. It's called Two Ways of Living. Before telling you about the story, let me read you the first few lines and just think about, imagine what's going on in your head. Imagine what's the story is about. So let me read it for you, the first few lines. The Maidan was lush with fresh grass as far as the eye could see. My heart kept right up to the skies at the sight. It had been ages since I had seen such a rich pasture. I pranced about as I pleased. The gentle feel of the greenery around my feet brought my sweetheart to my mind, my Hira. If only she was here. How happy we could have been. Her tender body was softer than this grass. We had surrendered ourselves to each other the very first time we had met. When I unlocked my heart to her, Hira had come to me shyly, placed her head on my neck, and offered herself to me. I had been thrilled by her touch, her twinkling eyes. So, what does that sound like? Probably sounds like, to me at least, a guy just lost in his romantic thoughts, thinking about his Hira. Maybe it sounds similar to you, maybe something else. But then what happens is there comes this guy who wakes him up and says, "You're dreaming, and just get up, go about your day. You have to do certain tasks." And it seems like we're talking about a slave here, because the way he's being treated, he's being beaten, harassed, and then taken to work along with some other people. It seems like some kind of slavery is going on. And during the subsequent scenes, a lot of things happen. Different people are having affair. He's thinking about his Hira. Some are getting married. Especially the owners. It seems like one particular story is about owners who are living their life. They're talking about marriage. Then these are the slaves, whose slaves have their own worlds where they're having affairs, just talking to each other in hush hush tones. So these two worlds are being described here. But, and here comes the twist, in the end, we find that these are not the slaves, these are the animals. Then just makes you think, as I said, that how do we treat these animals, the animals we own? In this case, this was a horse. He was supposed to carry the cart and being beaten and being treated in a really bad way. The story really moves you, how you treat animals. Probably their world has been imagined. It's probably not as rich, we don't know, as it has been imagined. Probably they are not as romantic, maybe they are, we don't know again. But the idea is we probably don't care about their world, and we treat them in a really harsh manner, especially when we own them. And makes you think, makes you think what you're doing to them. And finally, the last story is called Between Rules and Regulations. It was written in around 1990s, and the story is about there's a Muslim woman who has just been divorced by her husband without her consent, of course, and she's living with her mother. So, what really happened was this woman who was living with her husband and in laws, the husband demands some gold, he wants to sell it, make some money out of it. She says no to it. The husband and his mother, they get mad and they are like, go back to your mother, go back to your own house. We don't want you anymore. Then she has her kids also. She's pregnant at the same time. She goes back. She's staying with her mother, and that's where the setting of the story is: a woman living alone, not alone really, but separated from her husband, living with her mother. There are her kids, and how difficult it can be in a patriarchal society because she doesn't get any support. Even her mother doesn't support her. The mother says, go back to your husband, whatever he demands, you just have to fulfill it. Whatever he says, you're supposed to be like that. Women are supposed to suffer. So, those are the kind of ideas that not just men but also women they perpetuate in a patriarchal society. And it's really hard for the protagonist of the story how she deals with it. There's a lot of trauma. She's just going through her life with such burdens. She's pregnant also. Then we learn about some superstitions being done, alternate medicines are being used to treat her as the pregnancy turns to delivery and a new child is born. And after some time, we learn that her husband wants to take her back, and there is certain protocol that has to be followed in Islam, and that is being discussed. Her mother is discussing these ideas, but the daughter, the protagonist, she is not happy. She says, "What if my husband does the same once again? What's the point of all this?" And her mother is not really supportive once again. She's not being supportive at all. And after a while, she falls sick, the woman, and gets really difficult. It's once again being treated by all these quacks. And eventually, one day, she calls her children and tells them that you must listen to your grandmother, and then turns to her mother and says that it's my husband who has made me suffer. It's him that has done all the wrong deeds, and yet I am suffering. Those were the last words she says, and then dies. So, once again, a tragic tale makes you think about so many things. And personally, I really liked the kind of depth and important issues these stories they highlight. That's really the richness of India's regional literature, and something that we need to celebrate and appreciate more, which is what I'm trying to do here. I hope you'll get a chance to read these works and appreciate them whenever you can. And I hope we can do justice to these works, the kind of audience and kind of appreciation they deserve. So that's all from me for now. I'm sure you'll check out the book. These were just 3 or 4 stories that I shared with you, discussed with you, but there are many more. There are, I think, 17 or 18 stories in total, if I'm not wrong, in this book. So, plenty to look forward to if you are going to read this, and I'm sure you'll have a good time reading it. Also, not just the stories, the human emotions, the settings, these stories give you such a nice idea about the kind of society as it was 100 years ago, maybe in some cases 50 years ago, 30, 40 years ago, or 125 years ago. So you can see the progression of the stories, the kind of narratives that are prevalent, how people are, in some cases, rooted to their culture, in other cases, they are moving towards modernity. All the flux of these ideologies that comes in the background, you can notice that in these stories. So it's a as a student of literature and also as a student of history, culture, there's so much to soak in from these stories. So, with that, I'll take your leave and I'll catch you the next time with more stories, more books. Thank you very much for listening.